So what do you actually gain from a reserve study? Well, it depends on who's asking. It helps board members set a budget and communicate accurate cost expectations to homeowners. It helps lenders assess the risk of making loans to homes in the association. And it helps insurers know how to set the premiums to attract the client, yet protect their interests. Throughout this What is a Reserve Study webinar, the message is consistent. A reserve study doesn't eliminate uncertainty. It just helps owners, board members, lenders, and insurance professionals manage uncertainty.
So we asked the question, what do you learn from a reserve study? Depending on your point of view, what kind of information is in there? And for the mortgage lenders, they're looking primarily for, is the association inviting special assessment risk on its members? Is some stumbles or lack of leadership or financial problems at the association level going to cause a special assessment that's going to destabilize their nice homeowner who is just on the verge of being able to afford this home? So, as I said before, the mortgage lenders are looking for the magic percentage of reserve transfers compared to total budget. And in the past, that's been 10%. As of March 18, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac both announced that that number is going to move to 15% in January of next year. They've given us all advance warning. So not really a big deal because, as I'll show later, the normal amount going to reserves needs to be somewhere in the 15 to 45% range. So increasing the minimum standard from 10 to 15%, no big deal. They're looking for what are the total expenses in the next 5 years. Again, they're looking for anything that might destabilize the association. Is there a tidal wave coming that is going to knock the association backwards, and the association, therefore, special assessing the members? And it's all driven by Fannie and Freddie. They control, I've heard different numbers, 60 to 70% of the mortgages in this country, residential mortgages. You want to comply with their standards because that will give prospective homeowners and any homeowner refinancing favorable rates. And we all want favorable rates, especially when rates are so high. And they are looking if the association is funding per plan. Are they following the recommendation? Or are they drifting sideways or even going backwards in some cases? Insurance professionals, they're looking at how well is the property being maintained. They're looking at if the association is taking agency for maintaining its own self. Are they just, again, waiting for things to fail, potentially inviting accidents? And boy, insurance professionals hate hearing that because they're going to say, if you're inviting accidents, we're inviting you to pay a higher premium. And then they're also looking, does the association have the dollars to maintain itself? They're looking if you're funding per plan. They want the association to do its part, handling the known projects that can delay or eliminate so many accidents. So for the boards and homeowners, this may be familiar to the majority of our audience. The component list says, what do we have to maintain? What are we up against? What are the mountain that we need to climb? Second, what is our percent funded? How are we doing right now? How good of a starting point do we have? And the third is, based on all that, what's going to happen to our recommended funding? Are our homeowner assessments going to go up? And that's a very good question. And I probably outlined that you're going to learn that. But let me ask a slightly different question. Does the budgeted reserve funding change the cost of living at the association? Okay. If we say you need to increase your reserve funding from $5,000 a month to $6,000 a month, does that increase the cost of living at your association? Average person is going to respond to, of course, it's very simple. When things go up, everything gets more expensive. But I'm going to suggest the answer is no. The cost is unchanged. That roof is going to fail. The asphalt's going to fail. The only choice is, are you going to pay for that via a special assessment because you've waited until the bill actually happens? Or are you going to pay for it via budgeted funding, spreading it out nice and fairly, nice and evenly over time? So the cost is the cost. Reserve funding doesn't increase the cost of living at the association. It just means that you're going to be paying your fair share over time not via a special assessment. And what is that number? I said earlier, but I want you to have a visual. Reserve funding among our clients, we've looked back to the over 100,000 reserve studies that we've prepared. Reserve funding, sufficient reserve funding, is typically 15 to 45%. It's typically 15 to 45% of the average association's budget. It needs to be. It's a significant expense. I said earlier, owning and maintaining real estate is expensive, and I meant it. The average, if you were to ask me what should we be doing, I'd say set aside 25%. I can give you that for free. You're going to learn the actual number in your completed, updated reserve study. And you may be saying, holy moly, nobody can spend that much. And I probably chose a poor word there because it's really investing. All you're doing is setting it aside, and that way it's sitting there growing with interest for the next roof project. So no one can fund the reserves appropriately. That's just way too much. And the answer is, you're wrong. What we see among our clients is that about 26% of our clients are in that strong range, 70% or higher. About 40% are in the fair range, 30 to 70%. And about 34%, pretty close to 1/3, is in the weak range. Those are the ones making all the news, making all the squawks. They're the ones having all the special assessments. You want to get out of the red range and join the fair club. And if you're in the fair club, you want to slightly increase your reserve funding. You want to move from the fair range into the strong range by slightly increasing your reserve funding. And with that, we'll get to the conclusion. So let me bring this program in for a landing. Some of the ideas to learn is that a reserve study gets out of date. It's a perishable commodity. So update on the basis of a diligent visual site inspection, a with site visit update at least every third year. And again, the 3 C's. The costs change, the conditions change, and the cash and reserve changes. So it requires rebalancing. It just does. If you think, boy, that's going to be expensive. Well, no. Every association should have a full reserve study to start their reserve planning. After that, it's a matter of update with site visit and update no site visit reserve studies. Each less expensive than that initial full reserve study. And again, if we look back over our now well over 100,000 clients, our average cost among our clients for a reserve study, I think is 0.84%, a little less than 1%. So whatever you're paying for a reserve study, it's going to be a relatively small number, and it's not a big obstacle. So keep thinking that there's not a whole lot you can do for the costs at your association. Maybe you can take good care of your fence, painting it regularly. Maybe you can clean your gutters on your roof regularly, extending your roof life. But there's not really a whole lot you can do. Owning and maintaining real estate is expensive. And doing that will stretch your useful life estimates. And so it will slightly lower your reserve funding obligations. But you have to get the idea that reserve funding is going to cost something in the range of 1/4 of your total budget. And to get that number, you need to get a reserve study. You need to update your reserve study. So your reserve study, whether you're an owner as a homeowner or a board member, an insurance professional or a lender, a reserve study is going to be your guide to the information you need to find out. Now, we've got additional resources at reservestudy.com. There's an option at the top right to request a proposal. Lots of great information, resources on our website. We also have a vast library of videos on YouTube. So you can either find them on reservestudy.com or you can go to YouTube. If you search for Reserve Study on YouTube, you'll likely find our content. Subscribe to our channel and you'll get regularly notified when we have something new. And we also have a great resource. It's a weekly podcast for board members, 30 minutes of inspiration and education, very encouraging. It's called HOA Insights, Common Sense for Common Areas. You can subscribe from all major podcast platforms or listen from hoainsights.org, or you'll also find it on our YouTube channel. If you're a reader, we've got a book. It's called Understanding Reserves. You can get it on Amazon. I've got a copy here on my desk that I will give to someone today who asks a great question. So queue up your questions here and maybe I'll send you a signed book. And with that, I'm at the end of our prepared content. I'd like to turn the microphone over to Jen, who will coordinate our Q&A time together.
At Association Reserves, we make the present less stressful and the future more secure. If you'd like to join us in that mission, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Leave a comment down below with what you'd like to see in a future webinar. Let's plan for your best future.